So, namaste. Hello to all of you out there, my dear friends and my family members out there. So, today we are going to start. Well, yesterday we started, and today is the next episode of the series Tell Me Appa. And today the title is Life in Kali Yuga. So, for people who don't know what Kali Yuga is, it is the present world that we are living in. Kali Yuga is this phase of life that we all are in, and in this phase a lot of things are happening which shouldn't happen, and the good is decreasing and the evil is increasing. But still, good people, we should keep trying to do good and hope one day we will get what the world deserves. So today I have more questions, because some of the different people out there wanted me to ask some questions. So I'll be mentioning all of them. So the first question is, my brother and I are teenagers. At this time of life, our mood swings can be quite violent or extreme. 1 minute we are high as a kite, and the next minute we are down in the dumps. How can we establish yogic balance of mind?
I told you I'm totally scared of this whole series of interviews by Divya Priya, because I have no idea what she's going to be asking me till she asks me live. It's an amazing question, and I don't think this has been an issue only to do with Kali Yuga. I think this is an issue that has always been there as long as we have had human beings and as long as we have had teenagers. Because one of the issues is, even scientifically speaking, is that the prefrontal cortex, which is the area of rationality, discernment, and the capacity to think of the bigger picture, that only functions when one gets out of one's teens. So as long as one is in one's teens, they call them the terrible teens for definitely a good reason. There's a lot of emotionality. The limbic system, which is in our brain, it is hyperactive, and because the prefrontal cortex has not yet developed to the level of having a higher control, this issue is there. But I think what we need to understand is that we all go through this. We have all gone through that. And in fact, I was thinking yesterday in our first episode, we were talking about my time in school. And there was a point when I was about 16, 17, where I had this type of terrible teen moments, and I had this we all have that rebellious thing that I am going to go out there and do something different, and I'm going to be different, and I will not follow what my parents did. And so at that time, I read a book, and I don't even want to mention that book because then you are going to read it, but it's called The Fountainhead. And this Fountainhead gave such a warped philosophy of I am most important person, I am me, and to hell with the world, I have to be myself. And the protagonist, the hero of that story in Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, was an architect. So I had this idea, I'm going to be an architect, and I'm going to go off onto a different field, and I will not follow my father and mother, I will not go into yoga. I had all of that. So I have been through that. Not that I don't understand what you are going through. But then luckily, I had the guidance of my principal. I had the guidance of many of my senior people who helped me look at the bigger picture, that here I was blessed, I was fortunate to be part of this wonderful tradition. I had been given an opportunity to grow up in this tradition. I was fortunate to have all this training, and that enabled me to get off my terrible teens, come out of that rebellious streak, and start to see how fortunate I was. People often ask me, they say, don't you feel there's too much of pressure being the son and successor of Swamiji and Ammaji? And I say, pressure is when you don't realize how blessed you are. The moment you realized how blessed you are to have this opportunity, pressure goes back. It doesn't mean you don't have swings, but you start to realize how fortunate you are, and the more you count your blessings, the more balanced you become. So I think it is natural that at this age there will be the terrible teens, There will be the mood swings, and there are moments where definitely it is like, oh my God, what am I going to do with these kids? There are moments where I'm like, I advise everybody on parenting, and am I a failure at parenting? Definitely I have those moments. We all have those moments. But what I then realize is, what a big blessing I have to have you, to have your brother in my life. I think when I realize what a blessing I have, and as I see you starting to shine into your potential, as I see your brother, amazing potential, his taekwondo skills are out of the world. He has amazing language skills, he has amazing communication skills, and wherever he is popular, which means that definitely that is starting to flower. So there are those moments where we are like, seriously, how do we deal with you? But then I think when we start to realize how fortunate we are, and I must say I'm so fortunate to have such wonderful kids. And for that I have to thank your mother. Because if it weren't for your mother, you both would not be here. And again, your grandmother, who from your childhood has been giving you whatever I was given with a bit more refinement. So I think let us not try to hide that there are the terrible teens. Let us not say that, oh, it will not be there with me, and when it happens, I'm a terrible parent or I'm a terrible child. But just realize this is part of growing up, and this is just part of learning what it is to be human. That is what the life lesson is all about.
Well, okay. So I think all of you out there, like maybe sometimes we might not, like in public when people ask us, how are your kids? And many people say, oh, they are great and all that. But man, who knows what goes on inside. So we are not hiding anything, okay? We all are the same. We are not superhuman beings that have come from another planet or anything. We are all like you. So, okay, that's nice.
We are all the same.
Okay, so the next question is, which life is best for me? Bachelor or Grahastha, and why?
You're asking for you, or is this somebody's question that was asked?
It was somebody's question.
Okay, so they are asking the question, which is a better life, bachelor or Grahastha?
Well,
this is a tough one to ask when you're on live Facebook. It's a tough one because, when you are a bachelor, when you are in the first phase, and Indian culture says there are 4 phases of life. These 4 phases of life are called the Chatur Ashramas. And each ashrama goes for 27 years. Some people say 25, but 25 into 4 makes 100, which is an artificial number. 100 is an artificial number. 108 is the actual universal number. So 27 into 4, 108. So the first 27 years of life, it is called Brahmacharya. And it is a time where one is to focus on the Brahma, focus on the learning principle, the creative principle, and get all the training so that we can manifest our potential. It is called Brahmacharya. The next 27 is called Grahastha. Graha means a house. Okay, like Navagraha, the 9 houses. Graha Hasta, that you are in your hand holding the house. That is why the English word Grahastha, householder. So it is the householder phase is Grahastha. Then after you have fulfilled your responsibility, then you go into Vanaprastha retirement. You can go into the forest or the garden of life, and then you are free. After 81, you are free to be yourself, and that is called sannyasa. So the question here is the first 27 years, the next 27 years. And I think both are important. And this is why the modern tendency is to say, if one thing is correct, the other is wrong. And if one is wrong, the other is correct. So we have a concept that you or me, or this or that. But I believe the philosophy is this and that, you and me, and it is not separatedness, but it is actually both. So Grahastha is important during the Grahastha time. Brahmacharya is important during Brahmacharya time. But if you try to have Grahastha in Brahmacharya and Brahmacharya in Grahastha, you are going to be in trouble, because then you are going against the natural scheme. Now often there are days where definitely I feel like telling people, please do not get married for God's sake. There are days like that. I do not deny it. But then you realize that this is part and parcel of growing up. Because as Swamiji said, your grandfather Swami Geetananda used to say, If you think you are perfect, just get married and you'll have someone to tell you every day that you are not perfect. Because what is a marriage? A marriage is showing a reflection, a mirror onto our own nature. It is where you cannot escape. 24 hours you have to live with someone. So you are being shown yourself again and again and again, and especially the parts that you don't want to know about yourself.
You might not know also.
You might not know, or you may not want to know. You are denying. I am not like that. I am not lazy. And then you have a wife or husband who says, just look how lazy you are. Or you think I am such a happy person. And they point out you are not always happy. So what happens is that you have an opportunity to learn more about yourself. That is what being human is about. Again, it's about, all of it is to make us a better human being. But what I will say is that it is easy to say that, okay, look at people who are not married. Well, they also have problems. Look at people who are married, they have problems. So problems are not going to escape because of getting married or not getting married. That is escapism, to think that if I'm not married, I won't have problems. Or if I'm married, I won't have problems. That is an escapism, because as Swamiji used to say, you don't have problems. You are the problem, because the problem is the ego. The problem is our limited perspective. So I think what is very important here, and I know that question, where it is coming from, I know who has asked it. And what I will say is, whether you are married or not, problems are going to be there. But what are the problems for? They are helping us to become a better us. And just as the diamond becomes a diamond because of pressure, because of temperature, and because of going through that intense heat, it makes the diamond. If the diamond does not have that, it will not be the diamond. So we are to be the best diamond that we can be. So your father said, if you think you're perfect, I mean, my father, your grandfather, often I get confused because he sort of speaks through me so much, especially when I'm gangster yogi, he speaks a lot through me. But what is happening is that Swamiji used to say, if you think you're perfect, get married. And then Kalavati, she added, she said, if you think your marriage is perfect, just get children, have children, and then you realize what your marriage is like. So what is it? It's another lesson. And why are we born as a human being? To learn lessons. We have been born on this planet to learn lessons, nothing else. The lessons could be good, they could be bad, they could be ugly. And that is why I think the message is, from a good teacher, you can learn what to be. From a bad teacher, you can learn what not to be. Same thing in life. From a good situation, learn what you need to be. From a bad or ugly situation, learn what you should not be. And that way, you enhance your humaneness. You grow. And that is what life's all about. Life is not an escapist trip. Life is a journey of experiential living, where everyone who comes into your life comes for a purpose, and that purpose is for you to know yourself better. Self-knowledge, self-actualization, and self-realization.
Well, okay. Actually, this was an unexpected answer. I was thinking that you might say one, or you might say like, okay, but okay. That's what I need, and that's perfect.
He nearly just told you what I usually say. Why the hell did I get married? Well, I don't really say that, okay? As I say that, we go through moments where we are like, those, we have those moments. But then if you think of it from a higher perspective, you realize how fortunate you are, how blessed you are. And then everything else falls away when you realize how fortunate you are.
Okay, so the third question. This is a bit of a long question, okay?
Yeah.
So, when some monks who are in the path of yoga, who are involved in making more and more of fame and fortune, and are forcing themselves away from the true path of yoga, and when people in general feel that such monks are more nearer to God, being in the Grahastha ashrama, treading the true path of yoga, how could you handle such challenges?
Well, this is a very tough one, because, what has happened is that Indian culture gives great respect once a person goes into the monasteric stage, sannyasa. And so whenever somebody has gone into that sannyasa, there's a great amount of respect, and with the respect comes an expectation. Now in modern times, what has happened is that there has been a big mixture. And so you have business people who seem enlightened, and you have people who are enlightened who seem to be business people. So what we now have in Kali Yuga especially, I think there has been a lot of mixture. And so you have people who are sannyasins basically, but in business. And yet I know many business people. One of them I would be happy to name, and that is Naveen Daswani ji. Naveen Daswani ji of the Super Audio Company. He is a businessman, one of the best businessmen in the music industry. Yet, he is one of the most spiritually evolved people I know in my life, and have a blessing to be with him. I will not forget our trip to Rishikesh and Haridwar with him a few years ago, where he stopped specially to buy peanuts, just to stop on the roadside and feed monkeys. It was amazing. And his generous heart, I tell you, he is a businessman, but he has attained a very high state of mind, of spiritual awareness. And then I find many spiritual people who run spiritual organizations who have nothing that he has, but are focused only on money. So it is very difficult. Kali Yuga is not an easy time. And that is why in Kali Yuga, what we need to understand is again that same lesson. See the people and from them learn what to be or what not to be. Is that what you want to be? Are you going to be a spiritual MBA? Or are you going to manifest your spirituality? Are you going to be making money from spirituality, or making money through spirituality, or making money and being spiritual? So here I think what we need to understand, earlier there was that concept, if you are spiritual, you should not want money. So many people used to have that issue. And so when Swamiji started teaching, your grandfather started teaching, he used to teach free. And I have imbibed that gene, so I have that same issue. People are saying, why Dr. Ananda are you giving away all these sessions? Last 40 plus days, you have been just teaching. I say, because teaching is my life. Sharing is my life. So whether people pay me or not is secondary. Now it is nice when people pay you, because then you can pay your bills. So what happened is your grandfather started Ananda Ashram in 1967. And at the end of the course, he said, okay, we will have a Guru Dakshina. And people can give what they want. And somebody gave 5 rupees, somebody gave 7 rupees, somebody gave 6 rupees. And for 6 months, he had taught people, he had given them shelter in the ashram, he had fed them from his own pocket, and at the end of that, he did not even get back 2% of what he had invested. That is why in the ashram rules, we started saying this is the bare minimum donation people should make. Another student of this tradition from Bangalore, he recently wrote me and he said the same thing. He had his students, he said, okay, you can give me Guru Dakshina in a cover without writing your names, so that I don't identify who gave me back what. I don't want to identify my students by how much they gave me. Very beautiful concept, noble concept, spiritual concept. And you know what happened? One cover had 2 rupees, another had 10 rupees, another had 20 rupees. So this is the problem, that we are living in a time where people expect the spiritual teachings to be given free without realizing they are the highest teachings. And because people only value what they pay for, what we found in Kamli Swami Madam, Swamiji and Ammaji taught thousands of kids free. They gave them food, they gave them clothing, so much of support. But people did not value it. Now at Yoganjali Natyalayam, in 1993 when we started, we say we'll have a minimum fee, a couple of 100 rupees per month. And suddenly people value it. Because what has happened in modern times is people value when they pay for it. So if you say, we have the great Guru coming to Pondicherry, and if you pay 10,000 rupees, you can sit in the first line and you will get a special darshan, immediately they pay. But then if you say these are high spiritual concepts, they say, why should I pay for it? Dr. Ananda, can't you give it to me free? After all, why are you being so money-minded? So the problem is, we think spirituality shouldn't have material, and we think material should not have spiritual. Again, the same answer. It should be spiritual and material balanced. It should be material and spiritual balanced. If we find that balance in our life, I think then we have really made a grand success as a human being.
Okay, just a thought that came. I know you very well actually. So I know that whatever happens, even if the whole world turns against you, you won't take money and you would even teach your enemy freely. But you are not going to get money from them. But
just speaking of that, there is a very interesting character in the Mahabharata. One of the Pandavas is Sahadeva.
yeah, the last one.
Yes.
One of the princes.
And Sahadeva is known to be an amazing astrologer.
Okay.
So he knows like what are good times and all. And when they want to start the Mahabharata, Duryodhana, who is the enemy, comes to Sahadeva and says, Sahadeva, please tell me what is a good day to start the war where I will win. And Sahadeva actually gives him the day that will be best for him. He says, this Amavasya is coming. So on that Amavasya, you should start the war and you will win. Imagine the type of human beings they were. Same thing in the Mahabharata, Bhishma Pitama. When Bhishma, the Pandavas cannot vanquish Bhishma. He is an amazing warrior, blessed, son of Ganga Ma herself. Ganga Ma's son, imagine. And so they go and ask him in the evening. They say, Bhishma Pitama, please tell us how we can defeat you and kill you. Imagine. They go and ask Duryodhana. Sorry, not Duryodhana, he would not say, he is different. They ask actually Dronacharya, their own guru. They said, Acharya, how can we defeat you? We are your students, we have no idea how to defeat you. How can we defeat you, which means kill you basically in battle? And Bhishma gives the answer. He says, you keep Shikandi in front. Dronacharya gives the answer. He says, you tell, if anything happens to Ashwatthama, my son, I will lay down my arms and give up. Imagine the type of great human beings who have been on this planet compared to us, featherless bipeds, as the Greek philosophers said. And that is what I would like to be. And that is what I feel we should be as a human being. And that is why even Thiruvalluvar, he says, even when your enemy comes to you, that person who has done wrong to you, do good for them. That is what being human is all about. And for me, these are not just philosophies, these are not just teachings. These are life lessons that if I do not live it, I am not being a good human being. And if I am not a good human being, how can I be a good example for you and your brother?
Okay, so that was actually good example. That was unexpected. I wasn't going to mention that. I just felt like mentioning it.
And you got me to mention something which
yeah.
was
Okay, so I
there.
got a secret there, okay? An extra teaching today. Bonus. Okay, so the fourth question. This made me laugh when I saw this question. Do you ever get angry? Do you get into arguments with your wife? How do you do that? Or kind of maintain your relationship?
Oh my God, all of you naughty people, you are taking advantage of this poor little Divya Priya Bhavanani and trying to get all our family secrets out of us. Well, people think I'm always happy. No, I'm not always happy. People think I don't lose my temper. No, I lose my temper. People think I don't fight with my wife. Yes, I fight with my wife. People think I don't fight with my mother. I fight with my mother. Yes, because I am human being. A human being will go through a whole rainbow, a whole spectrum of emotions. That is what being human is about. But then to learn from that emotion, so that that emotion becomes an opportunity for your transformation. Not that you get stuck in that emotion, but that emotion becomes a learning tool for you to know about yourself, know about the other person, and become a better person. I think this is the most important one. Recently, we as a family had a very big breakdown. And in COVID-19, everybody is having breakdowns. We recently had it. But you know what? The good part is, from the next day, we were all, as a whole, it is not me, it is not you, it is not your mother, it is not your brother, it is not your party. But it is as a family, we decided to rise above it. And we have created a new normal that is better than it was before that. And that is why your Tata, so beautifully, your Tata was the most wise person in this whole world, okay? He was an amazing man. Seriously, amazing man. It's tough to believe such a man existed. Okay, when I think about it, after retirement from Canada, he comes back to India at an age that people would go and live in a retirement village and creates a whole new life. And with a new wife and a new son, but a whole new life, a new wife, a new son, and an amazing experience of Pondicherry. So, your Tata was such a wise man, and you know what? Your Tata really understood about the human beings. And he said, every breakdown is an opportunity for a breakthrough. A breakdown is an opportunity for a breakthrough. So whenever you have a breakdown, it could be a breakdown in relationships, it could be a breakdown in businesses, it could be a breakdown in society, or what the world is going through today because of COVID-19 is a breakdown. It is an opportunity for a transformative breakthrough. And if we can do that, we will become the best version of ourselves. As I am often saying, we become Humanity 2020. And Humanity 2020 should be the best version. So we have an opportunity. Whether we will be that or not, the choice is ours. Because ultimately, transformation is going to be there. But whether we choose it or not. Again, your Tata made a statement. He used to say, there's an old statement from the Bible. It talks about the chosen few. He said it is not the chosen few, but it is the few who choose. Who are the people who choose a conscious life? Who are the people who choose to make the breakdown into a breakthrough? Those are the people who rise to be counted. And that is the type of person we must be.
Okay, so that's another secret.
Naughty people.
Okay, so the last for today, whether this marking system, this was actually, we were speaking about this yesterday, quite a lot about it. Whether this marking system, 100, 99, 89, etc., has any relevance in learning process?
The frank answer is no. Because the marking system is based on a quantitative analysis. Quantitative means it says, this is the answer. Did you give that answer? Did you write 2 paragraphs? Were the keywords there? If all of that is fulfilled quantitatively, you get the mark.
But it's not qualitative.
It's not qualitative. And learning is not quantitative, learning is qualitative. So the problem is, we are trying to measure learning, which is a qualitative growth, by a quantitative metric. And that is where the struggle is coming. So people have tried grade system. Now in the grade system, the problem is someone who is at the top of the grade and someone who is at the bottom of the grade still get the same grade. So again, it has its own issues. So no grading system, no marking system has yet been perfect, which is why we keep on revising it. And again, it is not about you compared to somebody else, but it is you compared to yourself. So if we could evolve a system where the student who comes into school, what is the level of their learning? When they leave school, how much have they changed in that learning? That will be the objective metrics of that individual. But what we are doing, we are comparing a monkey with a donkey, with a crocodile, with a fish. And we say, if you can climb the tree, you are a success. Now the fish cannot climb a tree. But the fish can be amazing in water. So I think, I understand why it is there. Because in a country like India, 130, crore people. Now that's a huge number of people. So you have to have some sort of objective indicator so that you can give people, seats in higher education and jobs and other things. But still I feel that it is definitely not an indicator. So what I found is that if you know, it's like a game. How I think about this is a game. If you know how to play that game, you can do well. Now it doesn't mean if you get 99, you are not good. I'm not saying that. Because that is the system. But what I'm saying is that it is not an indicator of learning, because learning is qualitative. So when we talk about quality, we are talking about right brain. When we talk about quantity, we are talking about left brain. And we need to find something that merges both. I don't know whether it will happen, because education has become such a business that everybody is competing against each other, and again the demand supply. So maybe it is a bit utopian, altruistic to expect all of this, but I still believe that there's a lot of change that can come in the educational system.
Okay, so I think today we had quite a good session and a lots of maybe knowledge. Like I learned a lot. Okay, so I hope you all have learned something, and I hope this is helping you. Well, in the starting when I thought of this idea, I was just thinking that okay, like people, they might get bored and all that, so they can do this, but I think that this is something more than, you have a family out here and you can tell us anytime, and that's what I mentioned in my post in my account, that this lockdown, if you feel bored, you can visit, Ananda Balayogi Bhavanani account, and you'll have all these videos there, speeches, whether you like singing and speeches and all that, but there'll be something that you might be feeling interested. So I hope this all is helping you. And just to mention that yesterday I was really excited and astounded to see all the response that I got yesterday, the comments, the number of shares, the views. Well, this is not the reason that we are doing this, but still it's like another step, and it's helping us to do some more, and that's why I decided to do it right again today. Well, I could have waited 1 or 2 more days and done twice a week, but you guys have made me and pushed me to do it right away today. So thank you for all that. And just to mention, I was thinking whether to mention or not, but I think these people won't feel bad. So thank you to Dr. Balaji sir, Aravinda Kotiyar ji, Tripati Nayak ji and Nalini ma'am, because these 4 people had sent their questions to me in personal. So thank you for that. And well, the first question that I asked was a combination of me and my grandmother, just to tell you. Okay, so thank you, and we'll meet you all soon. Thank you for watching.
Sharing is caring, so keep sharing and keep caring.